My name is Lois Shannon, and I am the founder and creator of the Women's Network, which is an organization that is dedicated to recreating a vibrant and thriving sisterhood of happy, healthy, holy women. So for us, that's body, mind, and spirit, really bringing us back to our wholeness. And we believe, and Bethany's going to talk a lot more about this, that we've been in a period of time where we've lived in a system for thousands of years in the West in particular, where women were not considered equal, or that we were definitely less than, and that our worth was not as clear as it should have been, you could argue. And so that's created a fragmentation for many of us individually and collectively as we've been dealing with that situation. And so my own personal story was that I was going along thinking that I was fine. I had a large business career, was very successful, and had a family. And then, as I think is the case with many of us, I had a family situation, an illness with my son, that drove me into some deep exploration of my own lineage. And what I learned was that there was a lot of trauma and wounding in my mother's line, but I had no idea. And that I was carrying it, because everything, we're an evolution of where we came from and all those that came before us. And I found your work, Bethany, I think it was your first blog in 2012. Was that when you first started blogging? Yeah. So I saw your very first post on healing the mother wound, and it was so aligned with where I was and what was happening for me. And I think it's also really informed me in terms of building the Women's Network and the work that we're doing. So I have been so excited to have this conversation. I feel like we're soul sisters, and a lot of similar things are coming through us. So Bethany is, and we're excited because we're creating a platform for sharing all of this information. So Bethany is going to be a featured woman on our platform, and is coming to Boulder to do a workshop with us in person. And Bethany has a website called Womb of Light, which I think, Kenya, you put on the side there so people can.
On the side. Mm-hmm.
But, you do individual coaching and workshops around the world. Bethany spends a lot of time in Europe, I think in Eastern Europe. So she's very global, and is writing a book. The book has not been released yet, I think.
Not yet.
Bethany can give us a little bit more info on what she's been doing. But that just gives us a little bit of a flavor. And in terms of how this is going to work, I'm going to have Kenya just give a really brief introduction so everyone knows who the three of us are. And then we were going to do a little landing so that we're all here and present for what Bethany's going to share. And then we'll go right into the interview, to the discussion. And for anyone on the Blab Live, please don't hesitate to contribute questions, and at the end we'll leave a little bit of space, so if someone wants to join us in this little video box here and be able to converse with you directly, Bethany, we'll make some space for that.
Cool. Sounds great.
Okay. So Kenya, you want to just give a little update on who you
are? I think that sounds great. So I'm Kenya, and I'm building the Women's Network with Lois. And Bethany, this topic is really near and dear to my heart because I was having, a hard time a few years ago and really going into my own deep dive. And I realized that there was a lot of healing to do with my mother. And it's been such a beautiful journey and brought us so close, I think, that we've embarked on this journey together. And not only that, but actually with other members of my family, other women further back in my line. So I'm also now forming a really different kind of relationship with my grandmother and with my other relatives. And I'm actually writing a book about my ancestors, both alive and deceased. And I really, really want to bring light to their stories, especially to the women's, because I feel like they maybe never got a chance to really tell their story and share it with the world. And so by telling it, I feel like I'm liberating them in some way. And just to talk a little bit more too about this process that I'm in with writing the book and that I went through, and since a few years ago, it's a continuous journey for me. I really had to sort of press pause on my life in order to be able to look at myself in a deeper way to do this work. And then I really went into an exploration And now I'm really feeling like I'm beginning to embody some of these stories and these new beliefs that I'm adopting. And now I'm also too trying to express it through the Women's Network and through my book. And this process, these four stages, is actually something that we're offering on the Women's Network in a variety of ways. Wow. And so for anyone who's here watching, I would really strongly suggest that you check out the Women's Network, our website, and see some of the content we're putting up there. I've really poured my heart and soul into it, and would love for somebody to see it. So that's my brief introduction. And to give us a little pause, we're going to have Lois do just a few moments to land and to get out of our bodies in this minute.
So I just invite you to close your eyes if that's comfortable, and really notice wherever you are, if you're standing or sitting, just notice that you're being supported by the earth. And notice your breathing. There's no need to change anything or do anything. Just really notice your breath. See where you notice your breath most, whether that's in your belly or your chest as it rises and falls, or through your nostrils. And as you follow your breath in and out of your body, just do a little inventory of your state of mind, what thoughts might be present for you. Notice any bodily sensations, places that you may be bracing, where there's tension, maybe even a little discomfort. Just noticing what's present in your body. And noticing any emotions that may be present. Emotions are just energy in motion passing through. So noticing what's there for you, whether you feel a little stressed, maybe you feel particularly relaxed. And then I invite you just to, when you're ready, gently open your eyes and join us for this, what I am sure will be a very rich discussion with Bethany. And that little moment of pause is something, Bethany, that I believe we can do all the time during our day that adds so much to whatever we're doing. So we're actually starting to run Permission to Pause evenings in Boulder. And we have an app that we've just developed to help women with remembering that we have permission to pause. We get so busy. So those little 3-minute breathing spaces really give us energy and help us with so many things and are really valuable. So Bethany, I actually wanted to ask you, just to start out, if you can share with us a little bit about who Bethany was as an 11 or 12-year-old girl. Tell us about Bethany. So we have a little bit of an idea about you, and then we'll go into the motherhood.
Yes. Oh, what a fun question. Well, thank you, Lois and Kenya, for having me today. I'm so excited to be here and to share space with you and have this great conversation. So me as an 11-year-old girl, let's see, I think I was in 6th grade. So yeah, I think at that time, amazingly, I was actually kind of a spiritual girl, even in 6th grade. And I always thought I was kind of weird and didn't really feel very connected to my peers. I think at that time I had a couple really good friends, but I still had that feeling like, wow, I think I'm different. Feeling awkward. And this is kind of part of my story. As a little girl, I used to, pray the rosary every day. I had this little altar in my room, and I was very devoted to the Virgin Mary. And I used to pray that, maybe she would appear in my backyard or something. I was really longing to connect with like this divine feminine.
Wow.
And people in my family were like, "What's up with that? Why? Why are you into that?" My family was not particularly religious, but I was really into it. And I think it really helped me a lot, during those years of my life to feel supported and held by something, larger. And yeah.
Was she a mother figure? I mean, were you praying to the Virgin Mary
Yeah.
because you wanted that mother?
Yeah, I was looking for a mother, kind of that sense of being looked after and held. And yeah, I think that's, looking back now, that's how I see it. That I was just trying to create that kind of connection.
How beautiful that you knew where to go. That's
Yeah, I look back on it now.
You instinctively knew that there were other energies that could give you that kind of mothering, nurturing energy. So that's really beautiful. So tell us a little bit about what the mother wound is, and then we can go into
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that I see the mother wound, there's actually 3 levels that I see to the mother wound. One is the personal level. So any kind of painful dynamics that we might have with our own mother, and any limiting beliefs or patterns that may have originated from that primary relationship. So that's like the personal level of the mother wound. And then the cultural level is like the second level, which is all about how, we live in a patriarchal culture, as you mentioned before, and just broadly speaking, patriarchy just means that women were taught that we're less than. And that cultural backdrop is really what gives rise to the mother wound. And the way that works is, women being told that we're less than, just that phrase less than, it means scarcity. It puts this whole paradigm around our identities as, that there's a scarcity of power, a scarcity of love, it implies all this scarcity. So what this has done is kind of distorted the dynamics between mothers and daughters living in a patriarchal culture. And it kind of distorts that relationship into some degree of a power struggle where it seems like only one can be more powerful, right? So it's like we can either be connected or we can be powerful, or it sets up this dynamic where it seems like we have to choose between being loved and being empowered. And this can manifest in many different ways. The more healthy our mothers were in her own journey, the less severe, this cultural piece can be. But the more, depleted or wounded our own mothers were, the more this could come through, this cultural piece as well. So that's kind of like the cultural backdrop that's really created this mother wound.
Because you're referring a little bit to it, I think. But so how does it actually get passed down? How does that work? So it's very related to the cultural piece. Yeah. So the mother wound gets passed down through a couple different ways. But largely it's about this cultural atmosphere of being less than, women being less than, and how women have had to cope with that, through the generations, to cope with feeling less than, to cope with this seeming, scarcity of personal power. And usually it's through competition, through comparison. These are some of the ways that women have learned to cope, with the mother wound on the cultural level, is to feel competition and distance with one another. Well, it was survival.
Yeah, that was survival. Can you guys see me?
Yeah. Kenya just looks like something happened with Kenya.
I can't see you, so I just wanted to check.
Oh, you can't see?
Oh, I can see you now.
Okay.
I can't see Lois, but I can see Kenya.
I can't see Lois. Lois, can you join the seat again? Can you do that?
Oh, what do I do? Just get off and come back?
Yeah, maybe just refresh the page and jump back on.
Okay.
Technical difficulties.
All right. Oh, I love technology. How do I refresh on that?
Yeah, I was having a hard time seeing you for a second there, Bethany, but then you came back.
Good.
All right. Are we back?
Yeah, I'm not touching
Okay, there we go.
I'm not touching it. I'm just gonna like stand.
Can you see me now, can you?
Yeah, I can see you now. Everyone looks good.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect. We're back. So yeah, I was just saying that some of the ways that women have had to cope with the mother wound on the cultural level is usually to, compare ourselves to each other, to feel some sense of competition, to sabotage ourselves when we feel like we're becoming too successful or too smart or too something, too visible, too loud, too expressive. So yeah, there's all these different mechanisms that women have had to cope with this cultural backdrop of, being less than.
Right.
And it's really kind of driven women apart. So I see like right now as a culture, women, we're really waking up and longing for each other, longing to connect with each other. And we see this in the women's circles all around the world. And women really seeing that whatever stuff they had with their mothers is actually important to look at, not something that they need to kind of like hide from or, ignore. But it's actually, and this is part of my message, is that it's really a doorway. This mother wound, whatever stuff is there, isn't something that's a black hole, which I thought it would for years. I avoided it myself, but going through it enough, after 15 years, really seeing, wow, this is actually a doorway into our power. And as we heal it, we access our true authenticity and can emerge into our greatness, which is, I love this, the title of this talk, because I really think that's what our goal is in healing the mother wound is. And it's something that just happens. And that we do emerge into our greatness when we work on this issue. And our greatness being, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to finish that up by saying that our greatness is really our authentic selves, that we don't have to become like these large, people that have all these crazy skills. And, we already have our gifts inside of us. And that as we heal the mother wound, we get access to ourselves in ways that weren't possible, when we were in our families. To some degree, we've all had to create a mask to survive in our families, to compensate, to adapt to whatever unhealed wounds were in the family situation. Right. So we all reach a point where, those masks really helped us survive. But then it's like they become barriers as we want to succeed and really get out there and like be real and be true and have meaning, all those things. So it's like we all reach this point where we need to take off those masks and deconstruct the stories that we've been leaning on, And so the mother wound, I think, is a core piece of that, where when we heal that, everything else falls away. It's almost like detoxing from some of these patriarchal beliefs that we've had to absorb.
Well, and I think part of it was that we weren't safe to share these stories before, right? That there was a lot of shame, there was a lot of hiding, and so things that happened in our families became buried secrets. We didn't want to talk about sexual abuse or things that had happened, and our mothers never talked about it, and our grandmothers never talked about it, and so they became these stories that owned us. We were just at Emerging Women where Brené Brown was speaking, and her message from her new book, Rising Strong, is all about owning our stories. And if we don't own our stories, then the stories own us. And that's really true, but you have to know the stories, right? And I think that we've begun to believe that somehow we were separate from our mothers and our grandmothers and that we could have our own independent life. I think we've also grown up very independent as women. And so if we were going to be independent, we didn't have to really own the stories of the women that came before us. And I think that's what's really beautiful about your work, Bethany, is that you're helping women to own those stories, because that's where the empowerment is. Right? If we don't own it, then we disconnect from it. And we disconnect from the strength of all these powerful women that got us here, because they were the survivors. I mean, it's interesting as you talk about the survival skills that we developed, but that was because we had to be able to be here, right? Thank God those women were such good survivors.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So how can, we just talked about it a little bit, but how can healing the mother wound really transform your life? Like why? Because I do think this is something that's not necessarily easy. I mean, there's a reason why we've not really gone there, because it's painful. And there's memories of things that aren't that nice. And so we've pushed it away And there's a benefit to doing the work of experiencing the grief and the release, right? So can you talk a bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the part of what you just said really rang true for me with this. It's like, many generations before us had this belief that we could avoid the stories, sweep stuff under the rug, and ignore things, and that things actually went away. And I think our generations are realizing that there's no such place as a way. The stuff that our generations haven't dealt with, we have to deal with them, and they're in our faces every day, in the very patterns and situations that replicate themselves over and over in our lives. And I think there's a real paradigm shift here in seeing that the mother wound isn't this, it's actually a doorway. Like every time we work through it, we actually get exactly the skills, exactly the gifts, the insights, the realizations that we need to actualize our true selves in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not easy. It's not easy work. It takes longer than we think. Unfortunately, we live in this culture that says, transformation now, and you should be able to read a book and go to a workshop and be completely healed. And I think that's paradigm shifting too, is to kind of remove that patriarchal push, to get to the end point, but to really live into that feminine place of like trusting the organic unfoldment of our own healing, and to really live in the mystery of that. I remember on my own journey, I was thinking, when am I going to be healed? It's been years and I'm still dealing with the same issues. And there was a point where I did cross a border into, a new way of being. And I really am so glad I never gave up, and had the support to really keep that momentum going. But yeah.
So about that a little bit, Bethany. What was that line that you crossed? Like, what was that transformation, and a little bit about what that gave you? Like, that might really be important for people to understand, is what kind of liberation and authenticity that gave you.
Yeah, absolutely. My path with healing the mother wound involved, years of being in therapy with a really good therapist, thank God. And just really looking at this painful relationship. But in the beginning years, I avoided it. But eventually I saw that everything that I worked on in therapy eventually came back to, the patterns and the beliefs there. So when I started looking at it, it was painful. But something really magical kind of happened along the way that I wasn't expecting, which was that the more I allowed myself to feel what I was feeling, which was the pain of the mother wound, which were these awful feelings like wanting to die, not feeling worthy enough, feeling like there was something wrong with me, all the things that we don't want to feel, that were usually in the background of my consciousness. They started becoming more in the foreground. And, a lot of shame, just basically shame. And the deeper I went, I saw that, it's the only way a child can make sense of trauma or things happening with the mother, most primary attachment, is to blame herself. That's the only way children know. They just say, there's something wrong with me. There has to be something wrong with me, because that's the only way a child can feel powerful, and can thrive. If a child knew how devastated or ill-equipped her parents were in moments, it would be devastating. She wouldn't be able to survive. So it's just like really depersonalizing it and seeing, wow, this is what I went through, and it's not really about me. And I can mourn what happened, and seeing that mourning, that entering that pain bravely and fully really broke my heart open to a huge level of compassion that I didn't even know was possible, for myself, for my mother, for all women, for the earth, for humanity. I think, it's like the mother wound can be this real deep access point into something much greater than who we are as individuals. It can awaken us to a larger reality and to a whole new set of possibilities that we would not even know are possible. So, this work about healing the mother wound is also about awakening. It's about awakening to who we really are beyond name and form and individuality, and then coming back and occupying and embodying our feminine selves in these awakened ways where we can, emanate a frequency of possibility that others can really tap into. And I think that's my own story, and something that I really want to tell women is possible for each and every one of us, that, our pain really is the gift. That's really where all the gifts are. And each of us has a different kind of wound. We all have different dynamics, but it's like the wound itself is like a fingerprint And when we heal it and move into it, we get these very specific, unique gifts. We get access to them, and then we can really share them, and from a place of safety. And I think that's one point I really want to make here is that, you know, as humans, we have like two needs, right? We have a need for attachment, safety, you know, developmentally, and then we have this need for authenticity. And that's what Gabor Mate talks about, this amazing, brilliant theorist from Budapest, actually. He talks about, he's a Hungarian theorist, but he talks about like we have these two needs, and safety is always the most important. And then we sacrifice our authenticity for our safety.
Yeah.
And healing the mother wound is where we can have both, right? We can take away that either or of the scarcity of, you know, only one of us can be powerful. And we can reunite with that where we can be safe and we can be powerful. And that's my message to women, is that we can really feel, we can mother ourselves into our mastery. We can mother ourselves and feel safe enough to be bold, to be innovative, to step out, to be visible, to own our value and our worth in the world, and to say things that are uncomfortable, and to really basically live into our greatness. And I think this inner safety, you know, bringing it back to that really personal part, is we have to fill whatever mother gaps, whatever gap we had with our mothers where we didn't feel safe, we didn't feel seen, we didn't feel understood, we felt abandoned, betrayed, or abused, whatever, wherever we fall on that continuum of mother wound. We have the opportunity to fill that gap from within ourselves, and to be our own primary source of love, and to know that that abundance is always available within us. So I also see it as a movement from like scarcity to abundance. And so that's a whole other circle that's happening as we heal the mother wound. Is it's not just like a conceptual abundance, but it's like a direct felt experience that you have within yourself, all that you need. And that you can have it all. You can have the abundance, the support financially in your life. You can have the abundance of love and connection. You can have the abundance of creativity and meaning. And so it's really living into this in a very embodied way.
Yeah, I know. Well, I've heard a couple things in there that I just want to play back, because I do think that if we've experienced some kind of unhealthy attachment, or as you say, trauma or whatever, as a young girl, then we do spend a lot of our life looking for that safety, looking for that attachment, looking for someone to fill the hole in our heart. We get into weird relationships. We, you know, go and try and make money because that's going to fill the hole. Like, we look for all these ways to make ourselves safe, basically. Yeah. And I think it's really true. What I heard you say is that until we feel safe, it is impossible to feel free. It's impossible to feel authentic and able to share ourselves fully, because we're in a defended state. You know, we're defending ourselves, trying to make sure that we're going to be okay. And I think that was really what was handed down, is that for so long, women weren't safe to stand in their power and to express themselves. And we're in such a unique time now where we, especially in the United States or in these Western countries, where we can do that. And so it sounds like, and we have to do that for ourselves, right? Because our mothers, if they're alive or not, or whatever, it's really hard for them to, because they feel like there was something that they didn't give us. So I think it is our responsibility to do the healing. And the benefit, that's what I'm hearing you say, like the benefit is that if we learn to mother ourselves, instead of being victims of the fact that we didn't get something, right? So we empower ourselves. So you get this sense of empowerment that I'm not dependent on someone else. I can empower myself, and now I can share myself fully with the world. So that's what I really heard is the biggest benefit from doing this work is, yes, it's painful. Yes, it's hard. It's not always, you know, easy to go into the wounding and the grief. But if we don't go there, then we lose so much of ourselves and so much of what we can offer the world, right?
Yeah, it's almost like by going right into that pain, Lois, like you were saying, we actually realize how vast we really are. I think there's like an evolutionary impulse in the mother wound where it's such a deep wound. It brings us in such deep contact with our humanity, with our with our vulnerability. And by going there, by having the courage to go there, we can discover, wow, I can hold any amount of pain. Like who I am in the larger I sense, is vaster than any painful emotion. And we can really feel that's the ultimate safety, really, is that anything can happen to you on the outside. But if you've got this strong, safe foundation where you've viscerally gone through it yourself, like you've seen your own pain, you've gone there, you know that nothing can destroy you ultimately, that who you are, your spirit, your love, the power of you as an individual and also as a larger, vaster consciousness can never be destroyed. It's a larger, there's so many layers to this realization. It's hard to even talk about, it's just so big.
Well, what I think is really interesting is that, not to keep bringing up Brene, but she's so in the middle of this with all of her shame work and authenticity. But her book, Rising Strong, her quote is something like, there's nothing that the fearmongers hate worse than those who are willing to fall and rise again. And if you've gone through your pain, you can rise strong, right? Because there's nothing that you're afraid of anymore. You're like, I've already been in the dark. I've already been in the hole.
I really feel like this is everything that you're talking about is so much the path of the warrior, because it really does require us to get really strong in ourselves, and not from a defended place, but a really open place of being able to embrace our shame and to be vulnerable. And so I think it's a really beautiful path to walk. And I'm also just wondering too, I think for me, just to give some context for all the mothers who are watching, I think we were meeting with this one woman yesterday, and she really beautifully said, I so identify with everything that you're doing with the Women's Network and, healing the mother wound and all of that. And it's so overwhelming for me. Like, my kids are already teenagers, and am I going to be able to do this work in myself by the time they even leave home so that I can benefit them? Because I think for a lot of women, this work is not just about us as individuals, but so that we don't continue to pass on all those shame and trauma and, all of the patterns to our kids. So I'm just curious if you have some thoughts around that. How can, in terms of takeaways, how can we really begin to do that work so that we don't pass some of the stuff on to our kids?
Yeah, thank you so much. I was hoping we would get there at some point. Thank you, Kenya. Yeah, such an important point. And a lot of women do come to me for that reason. Like, I want to stop the cycle. I know the wound is there. I don't want to pass it along. And it's so inspiring for me to work with women who are ready to stop the cycle. And what I've seen is that the more that women that work on the mother wound, their parenting changes. Even if they're not working on their parenting, it automatically shifts. And the way I see it happening is, part of the journey is to really empathize and with the child that you were. So as a daughter of a mother, if you feel you have the mother wound, really connecting with your inner child and mothering her, empathizing with her. When you have empathy for yourself, you can have empathy for others. So the more you care for the child within you, the more present and emotionally available you'll be for your own child. Because what I see is that often women who have children can project their own child onto their kids and be blind to their own child. So it's like, as we make that separation, we decouple the wound that we have from our own journey, and we allow our children to be free. We liberate them to be individuals. The more that we take on and process our own pain from our own childhood. So it's really powerful to see that shift. And I would say too, that some moms, get confused. They're like, well, I don't want to pass this along to my kid. But really the most important thing you can focus on is on your own healing yourself as a daughter. So it's an interesting paradox, because the more you can heal yourself as a daughter, the more your mothering it takes on a whole new enlightened perspective.
Actually, I would even say, Bethany, what's interesting is the more that we say, I don't want to do that, the more that we actually do. Because we're actually denying the story, right? And so what you were just saying is, I know because I've had the experience myself, that the more that I want to deny or not be a certain way, the more that you invite it in. So I agree with you. I think you have to really go into what was my experience, just as you're saying, what was my experience? How can I sit and be with that experience and feel the grief and feel the pain?
Yeah, exactly, Lois. You're so right. It's like, and giving yourself permission to feel. all the feelings that we couldn't feel as children, right? Behind the mask that helped us survive, we had all these, feelings and emotions that we had to suppress in order to be accepted and loved by our families to survive. And so what we have to process is all the pain that was under the mask and really feel those original emotions that we had to abandon.
Yeah.
And as we do that, we grieve long enough, which is usually longer than we think. It really, that's the key that I find. Honestly, it's like when we grieve enough, that's when lasting, meaningful, significant change can happen. Because what happens is it creates the space for our authentic, self and our authentic observations and instincts to really take root in us. And it's really important to emphasize that emotional piece. It's not just conceptual, but it's really getting enough support. And it doesn't last forever. It lasts a long time, this healing process, but it doesn't last forever. And it's so worth it, because what you're getting through the process is something that can never be taken from you.
Right.
You get access to your truth, to your authenticity, to your core. And then the question after that is, how do you live from that luminous core within you? How do you express it? How do you remain true to it no matter what? How do you devote all of yourself to expressing the divine within you? Because now you can live fully from that place.
Right.
And it's such a deeply humbling and joyful and exhilarating experience to have that be the question, you live from every day.
I think, I know you do this with your workshops and bringing women together, and it is definitely what we would like to do at the Women's Network, because I believe just what you're saying, that this is not necessarily fun work, but when you do it with other women, it can actually be fun. I've been in trauma workshops where we've ended up laughing. It's such a huge release, and it's also a release when we realize that we can hold hands with our sisters and go, I'm not alone. I'm not the only one that, and I love the comment of, it's never too late to have a happy childhood.
Totally.
Because we can always go back and heal that stuff. And I think as long as we hold on to this image that we were the only one that experienced this kind of pain, or didn't have what we needed, or didn't have healthy attachment, the more of us that wake up and do this work together, the more fun we can have doing it. And I actually think we can do it faster, because part of it is that we've been hiding it and abandoning ourselves and abandoning our feelings and not allowing ourselves to have those experiences because they didn't feel good when we were young. And now, like, I'm 54, it's like, okay, they're not going to feel great now either. I've been pushing them away for so long. So I think, coming together in sisterhood to do this work is so important.
It's so important, Lois. What you brought up is just so key. I mean, every time I do a workshop, women are like, we do like group workshop, we group work, and then work as a big group. But what women say is like, I can't believe I'm not the only one. I can't believe, what she's saying is exactly what I'm feeling. Or everyone in the group just said something that I feel. And it's really powerful mirror. The group safety that's created as we look at this very taboo issue, it's very beautiful, intense energy. And it's almost like we're building a new mother line or a new sisterhood. If you want to, the women who are really healing the mother wound are creating the safety where we can really feel our pain and feel our power at the, both, they go together. And
that's how we break the chain. That's how we break the chain, right? It's when we come together and realize that we're creating a new sisterhood and a new way of being, that we can not pass it down to our daughters, right? And I think that's really the only way. Bethany, I don't know how we are on timing. I think we're wanting to leave a little bit of time for people to ask questions. The one thing I just wanted to maybe get a little clarity on, if you did have to give women who are sitting there listening to this some advice, because we've brought up a lot of stuff, which
we have.
For many women is pretty invisible, right? They're not totally tapped into it. And so it can be almost a little bit triggering, because you sit there and go, oh, like, I know that this has something to do with me and I'm attracted to it. Like, I want to do this work, but I don't really know where to go or how to start. Or any thoughts on just a little takeaway for women that could start them on this path? Or what advice would you give?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for women who are new to this, if this is like really new to you, one of the things that I would do is reflecting upon, because self-care is such a huge part of this. And that's one of the things that we start with in my course and in my work and in my workshops is like, how can we mother ourselves? That's a really powerful question. And create that safety like you talked about. So a fun exercise that you can start doing is to think about, as a little girl, what were some of the things that you wished that your mother did for you? And maybe they were like, could be something like, read you stories or cook you meals or pay for music lessons or really listen to you or, I know as a little girl, I kind of wished that my mom, brushed my hair, like really loving. I saw my friends' moms do this and I was like, I really want that. We can do these things for ourselves now. It's a very it might sound a little silly, but find ways to give to your inner little girl something that she wanted, that she didn't get. And just cultivating that nurturing energy. And don't take my word for it, because I was skeptical myself when I started doing some of these things, but it was so powerful. I could feel a deep part of me responding. And it's like, it sends a powerful message to our subconscious when we can give our inner little child, who's a living energy inside of us, when we can give her what she wants, it really helps to establish that trust in a very concrete way. And children need concrete, tangible things. So that child part of us that may be longing in some way for mother, it sends that message that I'm here as your inner mother, as your big self. I'm here to hold you and be with you and listen to you. And so find 3 things that maybe you'd like to do that you wished your mom would do for you, and then do them.
Oh, Bethany, that's such a beautiful, beautiful takeaway. And it really resonates with me because I always wanted to be a singer. And my mother told me I was tone deaf. And I took singing lessons. And when the woman finally, because I wanted to find my voice, and it was all about breathing and being in my body. And the woman looked at me once and said, oh, that was so beautiful. And it was like she became my mother, and I just burst into tears. I was like, oh. So I know what you're saying is true. Like it changed everything in my body when I for myself, right? And I even had the reflection. I was like, oh my God, like something beautiful came out of me. And that's what I wanted my mother to tell me, right? So yeah, it's really, really deep what you just offered. It's a very powerful exercise.
Yeah, I absolutely recommend doing that. Finding some way to mother yourself in the next 24 hours after this talk, when it's really fresh, that can be a really powerful thing to do. And also journaling. I really recommend, if you don't journal and write down your feelings, to take some time every day to write down what you're feeling. So many of us, had moms that were depleted or just tired or, wounded in some way. We didn't have a place to share our authentic responses and observations and feelings. So even journaling and writing down your feelings each day, giving yourself full permission to be honest with where you're at, can also help to establish that trust as well.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you. Those are 2 absolutely fabulous and powerful exercises to do. Kenya, do we have any questions or anything else?
I haven't had any questions other than this beautiful woman, Nancy, in our community really, really wants to come to our workshop, just to give you that. Good. So she wants to know dates, which we'll figure out. Nancy, I'm wondering if you want to come on and ask Bethany a question. I think you're still there.
I know, I love this.
Anyone else?
And I mean, I'll just say, I think it's really interesting, Bethany, that this is the kind of thing that it takes time, and it's subtle in terms of how to get these messages across, because we've done a couple other blabs, and one on sexuality and one on getting our mojo back. And there was, a broader resonance, let's call it that, like of people wanting to come and participate. I think this, it's interesting just to notice that this is a hard place for us to go. This is not an easy part of the journey.
Oh, Nancy wants to ask a question. Nancy, you can join one of these seats if you want to be on the video, or you can type it in the chat box, whatever you want to do. Oh, here she is. Yay.
Yay.
My gosh.
I know. I just want to honor the authenticity and courage just to come and be part of the conversation, right?
Yeah, totally.
Thank you, Nancy.
Oh, it's Nancy Compton.
So I apologize.
Yay!
I am in
Oh,
from
I'm
home.
so happy to see you. That's great.
Lois usually sees me a little bit more put together, but so
You are beautiful in all of your authenticity.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I so appreciate it. And thank you for scheduling this time today. This has been wonderful. It's sometimes this time of day is a little bit difficult because I do work, but I knew I had to come for the session today because Lois has shared so much about her experience working with Bethany and how the mother wound work has been so meaningful to you. And I have to tell you, Lois, you are just glowing, girl. I'm telling you. I'm just like, oh my gosh. So really the question for me was I appreciated the conversation around being able to do things for ourselves from a mothering way. And when you said music lessons, oh my gosh, that just like hit the nail on the head. I always wanted to learn an instrument and it just never was reality. So I'm taking that one. And I'm thinking about if you're coming in January, what types of things in the community or really specifically for myself could I do to really prepare myself for that conversation? You know, I've done a lot of my own work, but not in this depth. So what types of things could I do between now and then so that when I have the opportunity to come in January and meet you, that I'm really ready for the seeds that will be planted or whatever will happen to make the most of it?
Oh, great, Nancy. That's a great question. Some of the things that can really help to get you, kind of ready to do this exploration. One of the things I like to suggest people to do is what I call a belief inventory. So thinking about the different areas of your life and thinking about your mother's beliefs and your beliefs. So for example, you could reflect on, your mother's beliefs in various areas, about her body, about food, about money, about sexuality, about her potential in the world, about, various areas. What were your mother's beliefs about these things? How she expressed them? She might not have expressed it, overtly, but perhaps through her decisions or choices, you can surmise, what was her worldview? And then the second part of this exercise is to look at what do you want to believe, about your body, about sexuality, about money, about food, about your body, about your potential in the world. So kind of looking at these side by side can be very clarifying to see maybe where you've taken on beliefs that are really not authentic to you, where the beliefs overlap, where they truly overlap, or where you might want to articulate in your life a belief more clearly. So it's kind of a simple exercise about individuation, really. Where have you absorbed your mom's beliefs? Where do you want to articulate your beliefs that are different? And then taking the third part of the exercise would be to take aligned action with your beliefs, where you've identified that you want to go. What are some action steps that you could take to really embody the belief that's more reflective of you as an individual? And that can be a really empowering thing to do. It can be something really simple. Like for example, if your mom's beliefs was there's not enough money, there's not enough money for anything. And you really want to believe in abundance and that there's plenty of money for whatever you need. Maybe you can make a choice financially that demonstrates your trust in yourself as your ability to create money, trust in the universe to support you. So when we take aligned action with a new belief that's really reflective of our authenticity, we actually create the reality that we want, and we establish ourselves as that creator. And it's not in a blame or judgment at all. It's just a matter of really articulating your truth in a way that's really clear and conscious and empowered for you.
Thank you for that. It looks like, Lois, you had something to add.
I was just going to ask Bethany this question. How do you deal, Bethany, with some of the, I call it kind of blind loyalty, because we can't even really identify it, that there's a part of us, an unconscious part of us, that wants to be loyal to the system. And so if my mother never had money, then it's really hard for me to have money and feel good about it, right? Because there's a part of me that goes, wait a minute, if she suffered, then I need to suffer too in order to respect and honor her. And I think that that's a hard, when you talk about disentangling the beliefs, that's the thing
Total.
that comes up for me, is that that's easier said than done because of this loyalty that we feel. So I'm just wondering how you work with that.
Exactly. I'm so glad you brought that up, because this exercise can really bring up a lot. It can clarify a lot. Like, ooh, yeah, I'm feeling like I'm keeping myself small so I don't expand beyond, where my mother was. And there's a lot of research now saying that, we're wired to be, in line with our tribe,
Yeah.
That it's physically stressful to go beyond these horizons of possibility that our parents didn't. And usually there's some grieving there that has to happen. Grief for, how our family has suffered, how maybe our mothers couldn't have the money that maybe we could, and how tragic that is, and so there's usually some grief there. And in the grieving process, that's what really frees us to really make an empowered choice, rather than to, we mistake solidarity with staying small. And that's something I see a lot, is if I stay small, consciously, like with my mother, then I'm in solidarity with her and I'm supporting her. And really in seeing that that's not true. We actually don't serve our mothers by staying small. We don't serve ourselves by, staying small and attenuating ourselves. It's really about that emotional process that has to happen there, about the grieving for seeing our mothers depleted or not having what she deserved. And so it's really just about being with the sadness of that. And that's something that's really hard for us to do, is to sit with the sadness when there's nothing to do, but just to be with our pain, to see what our mothers went through and what women go through all over the world. And then to really, through feeling that pain and that compassion, then we can take our choices from a really deeply heart-centered place where we can, feel empowered in making that choice. And not that we're hurting others, not that we're taking away, from our mothers or our grandmothers, but really living into, like I think you said this early, Lois, our mothers, we're the dream. We're the dream of our foremothers, of our ancestor women who wanted the freedoms that we have, that wanted the opportunities and the choices. So it's like seeing ourselves, feeling the pain of what they couldn't have, and then really living into being that dream come true for our mother line, and living into that from an empowered place, not guilt or shame.
Yeah. And it does require processing all the stuff that they couldn't process. I think the thing that really strikes me is that my mother suffered a lot, and she did not have mindfulness or attachment theory and, somatic healing or yoga or dance or any of these things that we have now, fiber the dance. So I feel like we're in this amazing place where a lot of this trauma, I loved when you were talking about away, Bethany, that I feel like we really believe that was a place. I would stuff everything away in my body, like every trauma. I was like, okay, put it here. There's a little bit of room around my hip. I'll put some over here. And then I just became this walking, body embodiment of trauma and fear and all kinds of things. And so now we have all these tools so we can honor our mothers and our grandmothers and our great grandmothers who had these experiences and had no way to process them, because we didn't understand trauma. We didn't know that it stayed in our body. We didn't know that we had to shake, that we had to get rid of it, right? We had to release it. And so now that we know all of that, we're in a unique place where we can do that for not only our ancestors, but for all those women that are going to come after us, right? Because we just keep accumulating it. It's like whatever's in my body is going to get passed to my children. So we can release it.
Absolutely, Lois. It's such a good point. And I want to add one more facet to that point, which is that, as we heal the mother wound, we can take in that none of this is personal. None of this stuff is personal. And it feels so personal to a child, to us as a child. Why wasn't I seen? Why wasn't I held? Why wasn't I understood? Why was I abandoned? And those are deeply, we have to deal with those feelings. But as we come out of it, we start to see, wow, it's not because there was anything wrong with me. It's just that, my mom didn't have the resources. My family was, really suffering in some way. And we start to really take off that shame-based identity and feel like, wow, through the grieving process, we can let go of all those traumas that we've stuffed in our bodies, and we can see it was never about us being bad, about us being unlovable, about something we did wrong, something wrong with us. We can really take off that shame. And it's such a huge energy release, because it takes so much energy to keep all of these.
Hold all of that. Oh my God. We've been wasting so much energy. And on that note, I just want to really thank Nancy for joining us. That was so great to have you, Nancy, on the video. And I think it's another important point that we should include in this discussion is that for every one of us that shows up to do this work, that really shows up, it is a huge benefit to the collective. And so we're really showing up not only for ourselves, because there are parts of ourselves that we've abandoned. And so this work is about showing up for ourselves. And also we're showing up in such a big way when we have that kind of courage to our sisters, because we are a system and everything is about systems. You talked about belonging and our need for safety. We operate as a sisterhood and as a system within ourselves. And so for each one of us that stands up and does this healing work, it heals the sisterhood. So it's a huge, huge act of love and courage. And I always just want to honor any of us that do this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so sacred, the energy that's created, each person that steps forward and really courageously owns their pain, owns their story, owns their path. I'm amazed at how deeply sacred it is for the energy that's created as we do this work. So Lois, thank you so much for creating this forum and this network. And I'm just so thrilled to be part of it and to see it continue to proliferate and inspire women all around the world.
Well, and right back at you, sister. I'm like, oh my God, Bethany, thank you so much for stepping forward and sharing your work with the world when I think even 2 or 3 years ago, it was a lot more scary to be talking about the patriarchy and having a voice and healing the chain and all of these things that you very courageously put out there on the internet. And I'm going to just be honest, it's been really hard for me to do that. Like I can feel all of my fear and all of my wounding and protective messages back here saying, don't do that. It's scary. Something bad's going to happen to you. So I think you have had so much courage to stand out there and be the beacon. So I'm just glad that we can collaborate and hopefully bring messages and these tools and techniques to more women. Because as I said, that's the thing. It's not only are we bringing awareness, but we're bringing awareness at a time when we can actually solve the problem, right? Because it's not great. I think in the past we haven't talked about it because if you talk about the problem without the solution, it's just more overwhelming. And I think beautiful time and place that we are where we're bringing awareness to the problem and we've got all of these beautiful solutions to help us with this healing. So thank you for being one of the beautiful healing techniques that's coming forward to address those issues.
Yeah, well, it's so inspiring because for so long I did it mostly by myself and I didn't know anyone else doing this work. So now that I've come so far, it was like a sense of urgency. Like I have to share, like I don't care what happens to me. I need to share, like it has to be shared. And so thank you for being a place where I can share this. The Women's Network, it's so great to be part of it and to share with more women that this is possible. It's possible.
It's possible. I know. It's like I have so much hope and so much positive energy because, as you said, what will we do with all of that energy that we've been wasting trying to protect ourselves and stay safe and so on? When we unleash that, that's what the world's going to go, holy cow, what's that? I mean, we're going to have so much positive energy. And the truth is the earth needs us. The world needs us, right? I mean, this is a moment where women really do need to step up. And our energy, our positive energy, our healing energy is needed. And this is a process that we need to go through in order to do that, to be able to serve, right?
Absolutely. I think you hit on so many good things right there, what you just said. And I think it's about the more we become safe and we really feel our safety. When women all around the world collectively begin to feel their true safety, we become unstoppable.
Yeah,
there's nothing.
We have to use all that energy to keep ourselves safe.
Yeah, there's no limit to what's happening. I think for entrepreneurs too, this healing the mother wound is particularly powerful, like because it helps you to mother yourself into mastery, feeling safe to be powerful. And we create a new paradigm. We're healing the culture. As more women see other women do this, they're thinking, oh, this is a new paradigm. I can do this. where our mothers and our grandmothers had no models. And we're pioneers. We're doing the pioneering work. Every woman that is alive right now, in my mind, is a pioneer, just being here at this time. And like the away thing, and the earth itself. Eckhart Tolle has this great quote that, the trash floating in our oceans and the stuff going into the atmosphere, it's all a metaphor for millions of people not taking responsibility for their inner life and their inner stuff. And we're the ones who volunteered to come here now and say, okay, we're going to deal with their stuff. We're going to clean up these generational lines, and we're going to create a new possibility for the planet. So yeah, I think it's really nice to make that connection between the work that we do individually and how it helps the earth itself.
Right. Well, I think so many women want to serve. Like we really, that's in our nature because we have children and we know what it is to serve and to bring new life and so on. So it is part of who we are. And I think that's been one piece that's been missing for us is how do we serve? How do we show up? And
in a way that we want, in a way that's chosen and aligned with our values.
Yeah. It's an exciting time to be alive as a woman.
It is.
It is. I'm so grateful to be alive right now as a woman. And I think, for years I spent time thinking in therapy and working on myself, like, when am I going to be my purpose? When am I going to heal so that I can have my purpose? And then I realized looking back one day I was like, I have been on purpose the whole time. All the days I was crying my eyes out, all the days I was writing in my journal, all the days I was, working on myself, thinking someday my purpose will come. Right. I think it's important to say that each of us doing our healing work, doing the inner work, that's our purpose right now.
Is our purpose.
Yeah. So all that time working on yourself, doing the inner work, in society, it's not considered glamorous, and it's, it takes time and grit and courage, but that is part of our purpose right now. Yeah.
Absolutely. So well said and so important, because I think so many women are searching for their purpose and it's right there in front of them. It's that, right? That we're at this, I really think our purpose is to break the chain, is to heal. I call it the mother load, that we got the mother load of trauma that's just been passed down and that we're strong, capable, intelligent people, women, who have all these tools and techniques. So if we have the courage, we can do what has been handed down for many generations. That's a lot of work. That's a big purpose. I was like, that's a big purpose. That's a really big purpose. It takes people with really big ovaries to do that.
Yeah, I love that. Yes.
Which, by the way, the womb, I actually think that the womb was intended for healing. Like we have a cycle and we release blood every month, and so there's a cleansing that happens in a woman's body anyway. And we're actually made for that kind of releasing and cleansing and healing because of the way we're structured. And so I think we can also use our feminine physiology and beingness to process all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's beautiful, beautiful. It's also connected. It's amazing.
I know we've got these wounded wombs that need to be cleansed, and we're going to go on forever because it's like so fascinating. But I really think I just want to add this one little piece because it is a little bit of a call to action, that the reality is, if we do have wounded wombs, like if we don't do this work, for me, it's a little bit like climate change, that it's really, ignorance is bliss. As long as we don't know this, if we don't know about the environment, we can keep on living and abusing our land and so on, right? But once we know this information, then it is a matter of self-responsibility. And if we now know from epigenetics, which says that the genes get turned off and on based on experience. And so a mother who is smoking or drinking or taking drugs and affects the fetus is the same as a mother who has stress and trauma and so on, right? I mean, there's things that get passed on to our children. And so it actually does make a huge difference if we own this and do this work, right? Because it absolutely affects the generations to come. So it is an act of courage, and it's not always easy, but it is like climate change. We're either going to leave the world better because we've done the work, or we're going to keep passing it on.
Yeah. it's a critical juncture, right? It's like crossroads. We have to decide what we want to do. Yeah, it's so powerful.
And yeah, we're warrior women, right? That this is kind of a time for that, the feminine warrior energy, that peaceful warrior. I mean, it's not like we have to get out there and, create, it's a peaceful change that has to do with grieving, ironically, right?
Yeah, and I think
it's not like we need anyone else to do anything.
Yeah, grieving, absolutely. And saying no. Like, I really believe, like, and seeing my clients go through these processes, it's like what women say no to. Like, there's so many things that we need to say no to in our lives, in the little personal ways and also in the larger ways, like things we've been tolerating that aren't good for us. And as we, cut out with our sword, our sacred sword, when we say no, a powerful, empowered no, a no that's not necessarily defensive or laden with any kind of, negativity, but just a clear no, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to tolerate this. It creates because we have to say no in order to say yes to ourselves in ways that we have.
Right.
So really, I think saying no is so, and women's anger, healthy anger connected to this is not good for me, setting good boundaries. We help to shape and craft the future of the planet, the future of our line, by what we say no to with our sacred warrior sword of no. So yeah, I think that's part of it, is like owning our no.
What we do makes a difference. And we all want to make a difference. And it's like every little choice we make makes a difference, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I feel like we do probably have to close. As much as I would love to sit here and continue having the conversation, do you have any last things that you want to leave people with, Bethany? Any?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I think I just want to leave with this message that to just encourage women to remember that whatever pain points you have with your mother, things that you might want to just push away that are uncomfortable, that you don't want to look at, to just remind yourself in those moments that your power and your gifts reside there. So, our culture is saying, move away from things that are uncomfortable, distract yourself. And I encourage you to be that warrior woman, to be that strong woman, and move towards that which is your discomfort, because only through that, and get the resources you need. You deserve it. Get the resources you need to move towards what's uncomfortable, because there is where your true safety is, where you can find it and live it.
Beautiful. Oh, Bethany, thank you so much. It has been such a pleasure to have this conversation, and I'm so excited about all the beautiful things that are happening in the world and all that you're bringing to that. So thank you. And we look forward to all of our collaboration that's coming up.
Yes, me too. Thank you so much, Lois and Kenya. I love this. Has been such a juicy discussion, and I know we could go on and on, but I'm so happy to just share space with you on this really important topic. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Okay.
Thank you.
Lots of love, everybody.
Thank you.